Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the True Life Podcast. I hope everybody's having a beautiful day, a beautiful evening, wherever you are. I hope the sun is shining, the birds are singing, the wind is at your back. I got a great show for you this evening, and I want to start it off with a nice little introduction here. In an empire of numbness, where sedation is sold as salvation, one woman dares to weaponize wisdom and baptize bureaucracy in the psilocybin sacrament. Jenny is not a facilitator. She is a forager of frameworks, a cartographer of care, turning risk reduction into revolution. She walks the fault line between clinical ethics and ecstatic experience. MBA trained? Yes. But with soul credentials inked in sweat, in silence, and sacred listening. She's briefed lawmakers with the calm of a nun and the clarity of a sniper. She's testified with tremors in her voice and steel in her spine. Her resume reads like a paradox. Real estate magnate turned mycelial matriarch. Spreadsheet whisperer turned soul doula. Jenny co-founded the Safer Psychedelics Association of New England, not to play nice with power, but to redefine it. She speaks for the trip gone sideways, for the mothers who don't trust the system, for the cops confused by consciousness, for the firemen called to burning mines. This isn't harm reduction, it's harm revolution. This isn't education, it's uncolonized knowing. She doesn't just talk set and setting. She resets the setting of the entire conversation. So lean in close, fam, because when Jenny speaks, the old paradigm doesn't just shudder, it begs for a blindfold. And the future, it's already listening. Jenny, thank you so much for being here today. How are you?
I'm so great. That is the most impressive intro I've ever had. I don't even know who you're talking about anymore. I was like, who is this person? I need to be her. Well, thank you so much for having me, George. It's such a pleasure to be here to chat with you.
Yeah, well, thank you for your time. You've been working quite a bit, and you have run all over from academia into law and psilocybin. It's such an interesting way to find out where you are. Maybe we could just start there. Did you always think you were going to start off being in safer psychedelics, or how did you get here?
No, not at all. Gosh, that I guess psychedelics has this way, or like this space has this way of sucking you in. Maybe drawing you in. I think that's probably a better way of saying it.
Yeah.
And, like you alluded in my intro, I come from a pretty straight and narrow background. I did graduate UC Santa Cruz. And for those of you slugs out there, woo, woo, so it was a fantastic experience. I really loved my undergraduate studies there. And you get a full breadth of education in humanities as well as kind of soul searching opportunities. But really after undergrad, I really thought kind of like, that is behind me. I am an immigrant myself. My family were immigrants. And so I think very common to the immigrant story, you want to, kind of live up to the sacrifices that your family made. And so when I graduated, I thought, I'm going to work for a few years, go to grad school, tutoring between law and business school, ended up in business school. And like you said, I love the spreadsheets. I have so many anecdotes I can give you of my friends making fun of me and my spreadsheets. They're like, do you sleep in spreadsheets? No. So yeah, I mean, it was by chance. I'm a huge fan of Michael Pollan, being from the Bay Area. And I read everything he's written because I enjoy him. Right. And I picked up his last, the previous book, How to Change Your Mind, not even knowing what he was writing about. But I've always been interested in like brain science. There's a history of, dementia, Alzheimer's in my family. And so just kind of curious. I'm a curious person. And I listened to the audiobook. And I even asked myself, am I hearing what I think he's talking about? And that really kind of planted the seed of, is this something that could possibly help? And at the time it was my ex-spouse, going through a really challenging time of mental illness and depression. And through that process, I really discovered how much healing I personally needed, and I think, being, again, this is probably a very prototypical story. You have you know, you're an immigrant or a child of immigrants, you have the stoicism. So I've always kind of kept this very strong, you know, stoic demeanor, and really just kind of power through everything. And I just, you know, after psychedelics, it just really blew away that system. I realized how dysfunctional the paradigm that we're living in. So that's the short version.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. It never ceases to amaze me, the people that are sort of called in. You know what I mean by that? No matter what walk of life you're in or what nationality, on some level, it seems like there was a tragedy in your life that allowed you to realize, look, I'm part of something a lot bigger. You know, but it takes that tragedy sometimes to really be called in, whether it's mental illness or losing someone you love, or there's all kinds of ways it can happen. But thanks for sharing it. I always enjoy learning what it is about this person that kind of called them. It's almost like an initiation or a rite of passage. Do you think that's fair to say?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think this moves us into kind of our Western society, especially in North America, right? We've lost a lot of these rites of passage. You know, growing up, I was fortunate to grow up in the Bay Area, so a lot of diversity. And my Catholic friends had what is it called? Where they do their thing, like a catechism thing, and yeah, you know, and I was
the quinceañeras and stuff sometimes.
Yeah, and then the quinceañeras, and then my friends of Filipino descent, they had a kind of quinceañera type of thing as well. And I just kind of thought, oh, these are so wonderful, these like rites of passage. And then I participated in some of them, but you know, in my own family, we didn't have these, you know, because we wanted to be like really American and really just, you know, integrate, you know, and and one of the things was like, you know, you're going to speak English without an accent, you know. So I'm accomplished that one part, that, you know, everything else, you know, disappointed my family left and right. But it's and I just really thought like, wow, it was just so interesting how these other cultures have these initiation type of processes into adulthood, and we in the Western world, we don't really have that. We have this overarching culture that is so survivalistic, and kind of vanilla. I mean, I don't want to knock on vanilla. Vanilla's fine. That's kind
Vanilla's fine.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of there's no depth. You know, we are such a society that is so keen on like higher functioning, and higher functioning is just simply survival. It is actually not thriving, right? We've optimized everything. Great. We don't even have to leave the house to grocery shop or to, you know, say hi to our friends anymore, right? And so yeah, we're at peak optimization, and now we're optimizing like our, you know, talk about all the wearables out there, all the supplements, you know, just the, you know, if you peruse Reddit casually, you're going to see people that are taking like 15, 20 supplements a day, and they're like 25 or something, you know, like I'm just, it's just wild. It's interesting.
Check out my stack. I'm taking these 4 nootropics. I have, I'm taking these kind of 7 functional mushrooms. It's so crazy. It's like, whoa.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not knocking at that at all, right? But now I think if we look at the kind of the history of our progression, like we've optimized our lives so well, and now we're like turning almost against ourselves in a way, right? Like our body is not optimized enough. We need to optimize our body. Like this is the last frontier, and it's self-hatred. I mean, that might sound harsh, but it's a little. It's just it's penalizing to ourselves.
It is. You know, somewhere along the line, I think that we put an optimization mask on a society that's so specialized. That's not the right way to say it, but you know, let me just say it this way. In a world obsessed with optimization, what does it mean to heal rather than just function?
Right. Yeah. Excellent question, right? Because like healing, we don't prioritize healing, right? We prioritize function, because function leads to productivity.
Yes.
And productivity is short term, right? So, you know, I studied businesses as a graduate student. That's what you do as an MBA. And,
Right.
you know, now when I look back and I'm like, that seems so boring, but you know, again, I'm not knocking anyone here. If that's what you're into, that's cool. Like I was into that, and, you know, like I did the whole thing. Right.
Right.
But survival or like optimization is shallow, right?
Yes.
Healing is deep. Healing is really inefficient. And it often looks so, like lackadaisical, like a wasting time, right?
Yes.
No, there's as much time as there is time, right? Like it's healing looks inefficient because it's resting, it's grieving, it's actually taking a moment for yourself to unlearn something that might be harmful to you, right? And it's just non-productivity. And in our super hyper late stage capitalist society, there's no time for healing. You know, so yeah, it's challenging to when someone says, I mean, you see this in the corporate world too, at least, I mean, I felt it. Like, if you are not well and you need to take time away, our capital system, doesn't allow for that.
Not at all. There's something wrong with you. It's so strange to me, the corporate world. Like, we have gone so far down this road of productivity that we no longer really care about healing. We put on the mask of healing. Oh, are you okay? Okay, get to work then. Okay, are you okay? Because you've been out for 2 days. Are you sure you're okay? Like, what's your problem? What they're really trying to say is, we need you here now. I don't care what's happening to you.
Right. And if you can't come back, I got to look for someone else.
Yes. Yep. Without a doubt. Without a doubt. There's this illusion of safety. There's this illusion of healing. There's this illusion of we care, but so much of it is like, what's the bottom line? And you get it. Like in a world of so much competition, people are stressed at the highest level, at the lowest level. Do you think that is what's causing? Like, there's so much mental illness. And sometimes I'll flip through the DSM and just be like, look at all of these labels that we've created for people. What a convenient way to make everyone have a label and have it be their fault and to not push it back on the system and for insurance companies on so many levels. Am I being too hard?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Like, okay, we need a label for everything, right? Because God forbid, how would an insurance company hold this to refund or whatever, reimburse for the service, right? So it's, I mean, you know, this is the paradox, right? We live in this system, and we have to be able to function in it somehow. I'm a huge believer in, like, okay, this is what we have, and we got to do what we got to do, right?
Yeah.
I also believe that change happens. And so I've been thinking about this a lot because, and again, I don't want to get like too personal about it or make it too much, you know, this thing, but my grandparents immigrated to US, right? And then subsequently my parents, and then, you know, everyone, and my brother and I, and everyone else. And they were young. My grandparents were not that young when they immigrated. They were in their 50s. Imagine going to a new country and like not speaking the language and then having your whole family come with you, right? It's
resilience.
Like, yeah, it's courage, it's resilience, it's hope. That is what it is. It is hope, right?
Yep.
And when I think about the hope and just the post-war America and what America stands for. And, you know, I've been doing a bit of travel and through Southeast Asia, and happened to be in a place where they're celebrating the end of the American War. We know it as the Vietnam War. And just seeing the resilience of people and just thinking about, what does this mean? What is this country that I belong to, or that I'm, you know, a citizen of? And do I still feel like I really belong there? Like, I feel like America was this beacon of welcoming and like, we care. And now we've optimized ourselves. We still have this mask of we care.
Right.
We don't, right? Like the way, I mean, there are other countries that just simply don't care, and they don't pretend that they care. Like, you know, I can think of a few countries that are just kind of like, no, we don't really care about our people. And we're still trying to straddle this, but maybe it's ending a little bit, because I think our country has also shown some of its colors, right, in recent political developments. Yeah. And maybe this is, in a way, good in some ways, because it's at least it's honest. And we cannot have any change without honesty.
Yeah, maybe this is what the beginning of freedom looks like. It's messy, it's hurtful, it's painful, it's the darkness. You know, it's an ordeal. And you know, the same way when we go through these psychedelic journeys, you know, I'm a big fan of the big doses that cause you to have an ordeal. I see them as initiations on some level. And I can't help but think, wow, what we're going through right now in the world, and you know, choose wherever you're at, you can see it, but especially in the United States, like this is an ordeal. Like we're going through this thing, and it should be reason for rejoice. It's not going to be easy, but all this loss, like, you know, you spoke about your family coming here and you use two words that I think are fundamental in anybody becoming the best version of themselves, and that's resilience and courage. And these are the things that psychedelics show us on so many levels. You have to have a lot of courage to be like, okay, I'm going to take this dose. And I know when I take this, I've done the research. I have my set and setting. I have people there to watch. You know, I've done all the responsible parts about it, but it still takes courage to sit down and look at a giant plate or sit down in a ceremony somewhere. There's a lot of courage that needs to take place in order to have real change happen in your life. What are your thoughts on that?
Completely agree. It is so, I am always so humbled and in awe when I hear about people going through ceremony, because it's courage to look at yourself. When you're going through that ceremony, you're looking at yourself. You're dissecting who you are, and you know, it just takes a lot of courage to confront yourself. Like we do it on a daily basis. So first of all, I want to put that out there, right? Like we are our own worst critics, but we, you know, I don't know what that statistic is, but we have like, I don't know, 20,000 recurring same thoughts or whatever every day, right? And some of that dialogue with ourselves probably isn't super healthy, probably isn't super nourishing or caring either. And yet we have these conversations, but when we're in ceremony working with the medicine, it's different, right? Because we kind of space from ourselves, and we can just kind of look in with ourselves, and we are really thinking like, oh, wow, yeah, that's what I did, or that's who I was. And this is why. And now I have the agency and the knowledge to change it. And so that's why I think everyone who goes through this is so courageous. And again, you know, as the executive director of SPAN, Safer Psychedelics Association of New England, mouthful, you know, we're not encouraging people to work with psychedelics. What we are saying is that you may work with psychedelics, and personally, my co-founder and I really also want to give a shout out to my team, you know, my co-founder, Dr. Bree Reeser. She is an amazing person. This would not happen without her, and all the leadership at our organization as well, and their backgrounds, their specializations. Like I sometimes I feel so humbled because I'm just like, what am I doing here? And so I do want to definitely give an acknowledgement to everyone on the team. But yeah, and we have our own personal experience. And so therefore, you know, we definitely have our positions, but, you know, as an organization, our position is that you may engage with this. And when you do, please be safe. And this is how you can be safe doing it. But that aside, for me on a personal level, yeah, psychedelics has completely changed everything. You know, I'm still who I am, but it really gives us a portal to see, you know, it's how do I say this? Like, people can get to this state with like yoga, meditation, breath. It's kind of like the slow lane. Psychedelics is kind of like the fast lane. You can't keep traveling in the fast lane. Eventually you're going to crash and burn, right? And I just kind of see the two kind of together, and like the middle lane, which goes also really well with like the Buddhist philosophy of the middle path, which I happen to be Buddhist, so I kind of like that. But yeah, so it's healing is hard. It takes a lot of courage to confront yourself.
It's so true, and it's really well said. You know, sometimes I get tied up in the language, Jenny, where, you know, we have so much language in the Western world that does, like, the language of science doesn't seem to really count things that aren't measurable. You know what I mean by that? Like, we have these clinical trials and stuff, but so often the things that are left out are so important. I know back in the 50s, I was talking to Dr. Erica Dick about this. And she was saying, you know, George, back in the 50s, they would have these incredible questionnaires where they would bring in the wife of someone who had some real problems. And they would ask the wife, is your husband less of an asshole? You know what I mean? And they had these really brilliant questions though, because that matters, you know, like who knows the person that's in pain more than their spouse or their children or their mother or their father. Like that sort of stuff seems to be left out of the Western world of science on some level. And it's so important. Are we going to see, and especially with you being a Buddhist and having a background in more of an Eastern tradition, do you see these two things like this, the mystical side and sort of the science side beginning to spiral together like the double helix and kind of coming together to build something new?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a scientist, nor am I a lawyer, or any of that stuff, right? And so I do think and I also want to really be totally straightforward and transparent. Is that like I'm one of those people that believes in science, right? Like we have this whole debate of in our country of like science is real, and science is real. I believe science. I believe in vaccines. That's okay. And I also think that this is the thing about psychedelics where it creates space to a container for some mystery, right? For some mystical experience, as the language is calling it, the ineffable, right?
Yes.
And we do try to kind of stuff all of this into like a clinical box, a legal box. And, this is where science and the law kind of come together in a way too, that the laws are based on scientific findings. Well, but science is also ever moving. Like good science actually changes. And that is a kind of well, I just say good science. I mean, there's just laws that are like, there, like gravity is true, right? And but the idea of science is that we constantly evolve and grow without the certainty, right? Because with certainty, then we wouldn't need science, right?
Yes.
And I think that's the challenge in our world, especially now. We want a world of certainty because we have experienced such stability for so long. And, going back to kind of a prototypical story, if you will, people do all the right things, they get the job, they maybe even end up with the right person. And yet there's a reason that we don't feel internally like our soul is not satiated. And then we think there's something wrong with us. Yeah, there might be, there might be things but the answer doesn't lie in a pill, it lies in kind of looking within. And I think psychedelics is a way to do that. I don't want to call it a tool because I think that diminishes the sacredness of it.
Me too.
But it does allow, again, people reach these states without psychedelics, right? And that's totally possible. And I just think that in our, going back to our conversation about our topic about super optimization in this world, we have been trained so well. We have been so domesticated in this capitalistic kind of structure that we might need a little bit of tools, right? And so, people say like, well, how often, there's concern, how often do you need to do it? Or, do you need to do it every day? And I was like, no, people do it once in their life. Sometimes that's it. Sometimes you do it once a year and that's it. It's really hard to put into language, when we try to do that, because we're always up here. But really psychedelics brings it into our body because we are constantly up here in our brain, in our minds all the time. And what psychedelics does is allows our bodies to experience our feelings and to really process through. There's a saying, I'm sure you've heard it, you can't heal what you don't feel, right? It's true.
It's so well said. And shout out to your team, Dr. Bree, and everybody over there. And I'm so happy that we brought up this idea of language, because you guys are working with legislators. You guys are talking to lawmakers. And I guess the question is, how do you translate altered states into legislative language? It's a tricky one.
It is really, really tricky. Yeah, thank you. I mean, again, your questions, George, are so like, oh my gosh. I was like, oh man, there's a lot of prep I have to do for this. So yeah, no, I mean, the law by design, wants, prefers
Yes.
precision, predictability, whereas this, the mystical and the kind of the unpredictability of these experiences, they only emerge in contradiction in a way, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
one of the things I learned for me personally is just how to hold the contradictions in our life. Like I had a huge lesson of grief and joy in one of my earlier experiences. And again, I was going through this personal period of intense grief and just this feeling of being bereft. And I had a lot of loss in my life at that time. And through the experience, I was able to hold both. But you can't, like, how do you write that into law? You really can't, right? And so this is why SPAN is a huge supporter of decriminalization, because
I love
you
it.
don't really need to write into the law, X, Y, and Z. This is how, and one of, as you alluded to, I worked with the measure in Massachusetts, Measure 4. And one of the challenges as I was phone banking for the campaign was, people are like, well, there's this homegrown provision. It outlined, it was way too precise. And it was interesting. It was a huge lesson, how people get so hung up on the language. And it really taught me and showed me something about like how this political process works and how like the machine, like what the machine feeds on, it's kind of ugly actually. So, and the risk of kind of these types of legislations, it's always a catch-22, is that we might be, and again, I don't want to get too esoteric here, but like we might be colonizing the sacred. And
without a doubt.
Do we want that? Like, yeah, we do, because then it enables other people to do it. Because I have tons of friends that would benefit from this, but they would never, ever, whether it's their job or personal values or ethics, do anything illegal, right? And I get that. I respect that because I used to be that person. And at the same time, I know that this is going to be so beneficial. So, yeah.
I love it. It's so interesting, the debate between legalization and decriminalization. And, I see it a lot, like in psychedelic science that we're both going to. Everyone should check out. Psychedelic science is going to be a great venue. There's going to be some really cool stuff there. There's I'm going to be hosting a free concert at the Boulder Canyon Theater for Iboga Saves. But it really brings up this point about the legalization. And you had mentioned something that's near and dear to my heart, and that's this idea of, commoditizing the sacred. And I see it happening with like a lot of these certificate programs. And for me, I push back pretty hard because what I see happening, and I could be wrong, I'd love to get your thoughts on it. It's this idea of sort of commoditizing vulnerability, number one. And there's so many people out there right now, especially some of these certificate programs of some pretty big names out there. And I get so upset because it seems to me they're setting up on some level these, sales funnels disguised as psychedelic events. And then they bring in these people that are halfway broken, and then they charge them all this money. And it seems to be built on the same school model that's failed so many people. And it's like, these kids are going to borrow money to go to your 1 year that's going to turn into a 2 year. It's probably going to be a 4 year. What are they going to do with this degree? And I'm starting to see students come out and say, look, I got this degree. Now I'm working at this place and I'm not very happy with what I'm doing. I can kind of see the pushback. And I think that comes from commoditizing the sacred. It's taking this thing that's a sacrament. It's taking this thing that's a birthright and just wrapping its arms around it like it's just centralizing on so many levels. I know that's a lot, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I don't want to name any specific names, but like, I went through a training program, right? I'm a graduate of Intertrek, and I can say that because I did go through that program. I thought it was great. We had such amazing speakers, Robin Carhart-Harris. Gosh, there's another one, Kylia Taylor, like just some amazing thinking, like minds in the field, right? I found it really of value. But, they don't have the same speakers every cohort and,
Right.
et cetera, right? And that's the risk, right? Like, we need systems to be able to hold the sacred without domesticating it in a way, right? I can't think of the
No, it's beautifully said.
But in a way of just and you're totally right, there are graduate programs. California, there's a few, right? There's one at, like, I think Cal, right? And then big names, like big names,
Yeah,
right? Like,
totally.
Stanford's doing a lot of psychedelic research as well. There's a lot of clinical trials going on, and there's graduate degrees. And I totally even confess, like, I perhaps this is just me. I suffer from imposter syndrome, and I thought, I work with these amazing PhDs, these super smart people. I'm supposed to lead them somehow, or lead this organization somehow. Maybe I need another graduate degree. And I was just like, thank goodness, like, the people around me, like, yeah, no, you can do it if you want, but you're good at what you do. And I'm just kind of like, I'm decent, thank you.
You're good.
But yeah, but we all fall into that, right? Like, this idea of, like, more. Whether it's, for some people, it might be the bigger house, the bigger car, the better job. And for me, apparently it's collecting letters behind my name, like, we all have this thing, right? So, like, and I'm just like, you know what? No, enough is enough, right? Like, how do we feel and be okay? But I think that's the thing. Like, I think one of the things that our system really does is to tell us we are not okay.
Yeah.
To have us consume more, to have us buy that wearable, add to that stack, like,
yeah, totally.
You're not okay. Take this, drink this, and you'll be okay. And we live in that system where we're constantly optimizing and being told this is what you need in order to be okay. And social media doesn't help. Social media. I think that maybe perhaps I'm being naive on this, but I genuinely think it started out as a positive thing to connect you with people from afar, family members and so forth. And now every 2 seconds, maybe even 20 milliseconds, whatever it is, you're being sold something, right? Yeah. Our attention has been commodified as well. And this is why psychedelics is threatening in a way too, if you think about it, because when your consciousness is open and you realize, hey, I could be okay. I don't need to mindlessly scroll social media. I don't need to purchase every single thing that's being advertised to me. I can choose where my eyeballs lay. I could choose to read a book, a magazine or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's scary because that is disruptive, right? So I guess that's just manifesto there.
I love it. You're getting all Ted Kaczynski on us over here. I'm just kidding. But but might that be though? Like, might that be something that all of a sudden people get wind of? I know that, when you start looking back at the 60s, some people say, like, look, that's the exact reason this thing got shut down, is that it dissolves boundaries. It allows you to maybe see things in a way that you didn't before. Maybe it breaks that hypnosis that we're all under. And maybe that's something that people in charge are like, wait a minute, I don't know if I want another 60s revolution. And maybe that's the reason for the medical container. Maybe that's why it's so heavy on the medical language. And maybe that's why we're building an industry around it to medicalize it on some level. I know that's kind of an outlandish thought a little bit, but what are your thoughts on that? Might it be something that people don't want?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think that's the thing, right? Like, when we, and I think that there's something that you said that I think that really resonates with me. So thank you for that, is that you're talking about values, right?
Yes.
And what this world talks about is, what this world is selling you are visions. This is how you can be slimmer. This is how you can be faster. This is how you can be, bigger, whatever it is that you're looking for, right? And when we talk about values, that can be kind of threatening to people, right? Because we're sharing
Yep.
our idea of, you know, what's safety, what's access, what's dignity for people, right? And what can
Beautiful word.
actually help people heal and for public health, right? And so you alluded to earlier about kind of you had said something earlier. I can't remember what it was now, but what came to mind was how access, the medicalization of this.
Yep.
And Dr. Bree and I have talked about this a lot. Like, you know, I don't know that I exactly know what type of access is the best access, right? I have to really kind of think about like the systems. I do know that maybe putting it in a medical access may not be the best way. And Dr. Bree has much more behavioral health experience. So
Okay.
she's talked about like an outpatient model, like the way that methadone is dispensed as an example, right? And that, but obviously with more guardrails, right? And so we don't want to just give it to people and have them go home. And so, but in a way where, you know, we have existing, like, we're really smart, like we're smart and we can figure this out. And it's, I think it's just bridging the pragmatics of policy and kind of the poetry of the ineffable, right? And it's, you know, how do we bring this together? It's really hard in a
I know.
legal and a medical model. And then now it's like, I feel like we are so polarized on what people want. Like, again, people are envisioning, right? People on the one side of the aisle has this vision for for America or whatever, you know, their community, and other folks have other visions, but we're making the assumption that these visions are representative of our values. And I think at the end of the day, we all kind of value the same thing. We just have different ways of approaching it. And don't get me wrong, there are some methods that I approve of more than others, but I do think that we're smart and we can get there. It's a messy process, right? But change is always a little messy. And
Of course.
I guess I kind of, one example that's coming to mind right now is, you know, my friends are starting families, and having a child in your life is hugely disruptive, right? It's messy, it's loud, it's disruptive, you know, but it's also beautiful, right? And it's something that you don't want to just power through raising your family, right? Like, you really want to enjoy that moment. And I think this is kind of, we are birthing in a way, you know, excuse the metaphor here, but we are kind of birthing a new paradigm. You know, at least that's what I hope we're doing. And, you know, the point of SPAN is that we're hoping to kind of give some guardrails and some foundational support for this new framework, to enable people to engage with medicine and substances safely.
It's so well said. You know, you brought up the word dignity. I'm like, my heart sank a little bit. Thank you for that. Dignity, grace. Like, this is what's going to allow us to move from, you know, dignity and grace will allow us to be the midwives of an awakening versus the middlemen for misery. You know what I mean? Like, we need these things more than ever right now. And I see them on the forefront. People like you and Dr. Bree and Dr. Jessica Rochester, Matt Zeman. There's so many incredible people out there that are really taking a step back and being like, okay, look, it's going to be messy. We need to watch out for this part over here. We need to watch this. But I want to shift gears just for a moment. You've been working with a lot of first responders, and at Safer Psychedelics Association of New England and SpanBase, you guys have really been working with some people in the trenches on the front line. Can you share with us like some stories about like what are you guys seeing out there? Are there trends? Are there things you should be aware of? Or what are you and Dr. Bree and the team over there seeing as you're working through all these things?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I really want to be clear, like, our goal is to train first responders free. And yeah, so we have not, our goal is to get into firehouses, police stations, and so forth.
Beautiful.
One of our advisory council members is a lieutenant in the Winthrop Police Department. He's a peace officer. He's MAPS trained, a phenomenal human being, right? And so he's really giving us some guidance on, you know, what type of responses stations are seeing, precincts are seeing.
Yeah.
We're also working, we're supportive of decrim efforts in the city of Boston. So
Beautiful.
in Eastern Massachusetts, cities of Somerville and Cambridge are decrimmed right now. And there is an effort to decrim in Boston. With decriminalization, we anticipate that, and there's a statistic in our ebook right now, and I can't pull up I can't remember the statistic right now, but we anticipate that there will be a slight increase in emergency calls. And so our goal is to train first responders how to respond, not react, right? Respond. We also think it's super important to get out to parents, teachers.
Yeah.
Community members, right? Especially in underserved communities where, maybe kids have a little bit more freedom. Maybe they just have more time, like I had a lot of free time as a kid. And so, maybe there's more experimentation, right? Yeah. And so our goal is to provide, we have 3 excellent free webinars, trainings on our site right now. You just have to give us your email and we'll email it to you. So unsubscribe after that if you want. But our goal is to provide these as low cost as possible because we want to educate as many as possible. We think of it as kind of like a DARE program, but like the opposite of DARE. Like we want to teach you how to engage safely, not abstain, not abstinence. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, really, like the DARE model is a good model, right? It's like everywhere, right? It's so pervasive, and it's like, even decades after the fact. I think there's somewhere in my dad's house, there's a DARE t-shirt somewhere. Totally. But it's kind of that's what we want that type of consciousness for psychedelic response.
I love it. I think there's something so beautiful in the messaging too. And I was talking with a gentleman earlier today, and we came to this idea about the contagion of awareness. You know what I mean? Like it's interesting to think about how awareness becomes contagion. And that's the same way in which, something might go viral but especially with a program like you're doing, how do you make it contagious? Like you want it to be inviting, like you want to reach the kids that are experimenting already. Absence is just, that's not going to work. But what can you, let's talk strategy for a minute. Like, how do you make it contagious? Like, how do you sit down with your team and talk about the best way to get it into these neighborhoods? Do you change the wording of it? Do you have someone go in? Do you have a band come up and maybe there's a concert, or like, what are some of the strategies you're using to make this policy contagious?
Yes, to all of it. No,
do
it. Tell me more, George. What should we do? No. We're relatively new kid on the block, right? Dr. Bray and I, we met through Intertrek, and we really started planning this in September of 2024. Right. We incorporated January of 2025. So we've been incorporated for 5 months now. And we are in strong, what's the word I'm looking for? Donation seeking mode, development mode. Right. And we've had a few successful campaigns, and we're really this first year, maybe to 2 years, is about brand recognition. This is where I think business school is actually kind of useful. So we're really about brand recognition right now. We want to share the message of what we're about. I have already spoken and testified to lawmakers. I'm in touch with some lawmakers, and we've offered them, if you want to learn about psychedelics, again, we're not here to convince you of anything, right? And like, being in real estate, when I used to teach real estate, and I used to teach my students, like, your license might say you're a salesperson. You're not selling anything, right? You are like, the person sitting in front of you, they've already decided. Are they going to sell, buy, rent, whatever it is? They're just simply evaluating whether or not you're the person to get them where they need to go. And so when I say that we've talked with lawmakers, we're not convincing them of anything. We're apolitical. What we are for is education. If legislation is presented to you and you do not understand it, as a lawmaker, you probably shouldn't vote on it. But that's not what happens, right? But what we're saying is, if you want to learn about it, We don't care if you're purple, green, turquoise, yellow, blue, whatever. We will teach you how psychedelics archetypically works, the benefits and the drawbacks. We're not saying psychedelics is going to cure the world. It's going to cure every vet of PTSD. No, it's going to take a huge investment. It is a relationship, and relationships take a long time to develop. But what we're saying is, hey, this might open a door, and this is how you might want to consider walking through that door. And so that is our strategy that you want to, I can talk about this all day. Like, and we've spent like 50 minutes about it, but like, you want to learn about psychedelics, we will give you research-based, evidence-based, and our personal experience. If you want it, right? That's anecdotal and some people don't want that. So that you can understand how and if this might work. And why people are so passionate about bringing this legislation to fruition. It's interesting because, I travel a lot. I have friends all over the world. And, as an American, I often get this thing of, Jenny, you're an American and you think America is so free. I was like, whoa, no. That's like the motto of my country. I'm not saying, and is America free in many ways? Sure. But, but we are also so entrapped by ourselves. Bring this type of legislation actually might give more freedom. And I think maybe, like you were talking about in the 60s and everything, maybe that's why it's been so hard, I also have a dear friend. She did a webinar for us, Carrie Rowe. She's a nurse practitioner, and she said something to me that was so influential and so just sat in my heart. And she said that she thinks that psychedelics are coming back now because we are so in danger of destroying ourselves. And I was like, whoa. Yeah. I'm chuckling about it, but it sat with me, and it's like, it really, it's like, I think about that.
I think your friend Carrie Rowe is amazing. I love that.
He is amazing. I have amazing people.
Of course you do. That's why, birds of a feather, they say. It's interesting to think about it from like that esoteric level. I'm fortunate I get to sit down with the Mahadrina of Santo Daime, and we talk about self-love, self-care, self-respect, and just the evolution of consciousness on some level. And it does seem that my personal belief is that you don't come into this world, you come out of it. The same way that an apple tree grows apples, the earth grows people. And when you start thinking about that level, you go, oh, well, if the earth is an organism and it is changing itself, of course we're going to change with it. And of course there's going to be these fruits that we can have to help change our consciousness along with it on so many levels. And it does seem to me that we are in need of leadership. We are in need of change. We're in need of a return. I think Terence McKenna called it like an archaic revival, these rites of passage and these things that we go through, these ceremonies. And I think that's what's happening on so many levels. You're beginning to see this sort of new kind of awakening happening. And if I don't get to these questions, people are going to start getting mad at me, Jenny. So we got to jump into some of these questions over here. We'll come back and talk more about it. But this one first is coming to us from, where is this? Let me start at the top here. Okay, this one's coming from Desiree. She says, you've trained in end-of-life psychedelic care. What has death taught you about how to live?
Wow, Desiree, thank you for this question. My gosh. Wow. This is an amazing question. I don't even know where to begin. So first of all, thank you for this question. Yeah, I don't even know where to begin. I think for me, just as a personal contrast, I really, really liked certainty. Previous. I joke with my friends. I have Jenny 1.0, and then we kind of went through like 2.0, 2.5. I'm somewhere between 3 and 4 right now. Maybe, I don't know. There's infinite versions, right? Because there's always updates out there. Like, we're always getting updated. So I think for me personally, that I've learned that less certainty doesn't mean chaos. So just my background, I needed a lot of, I had a lot of hypervigilance, a lot of certainty, and I needed a lot of certainty, or perceived certainty. Let me be more accurate on that. And it didn't, and I felt that this control, I could control my life, so to speak, right? And I think a lot of people, I don't want to speak for a lot, I don't want to speak for, be so blanket on it, but I do think a lot of people suffer from this, and we see it in our government, and so we're, and so less certainty. The biggest lesson I learned is like less certainty doesn't mean chaos. It doesn't mean that my life is going to end and it's going to fall apart. What it does mean is more humility, more humbleness. I've learned to be more open to what life just unfolds for me. I've learned to not push so hard and to allow it just to kind of flow, which is hard. I mean, the idea, like we think like, oh, they're just sitting there not doing anything. That is the hardest thing I've ever learned how to do. And one of my early mentors taught me this, and it's in here somewhere, but sometimes I forget it. She said, non-action is an action. Non-action is a decision, right?
Yeah.
Because we're taught to constantly do. And so just the humility, openness, and being able to accept and to sit with and to hold not knowing. And not knowing, sometimes that puts me right in the present moment, and being in the present moment is the biggest lesson I've learned about living life. So thank you, Desiree, for that question.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Sometimes the not knowing allows for so much more freedom too, because we're constantly searching for answers. Or you ever find yourself talking to someone like, I think they're wrong, or like the truth is, I don't know, so you just say like, I'm not sure. Like it's so freeing on so many levels to not have to be in that fight or flight mode of conversation or side monologuing or stuff like that. But not knowing is a beautiful thing that breeds curiosity, right? And question marks look like scythes, and you can tear things down when you start having the right questions. And it's Desiree, thank you so much for that. I love it. Let's come over here to Neil. Neil says, how do you hold space for someone when they become the storm?
How do you hold spaces when they become the storm? I guess let me make sure I'm understanding this correctly. Okay. Like they've become disruptive in your life, and now I guess I'm trying to kind of maybe make sure I'm understanding that, or maybe you're in ceremony with each other and they're having a challenging time. Okay, let me just answer this generically, Neil. I'm not sure if I'm gonna. If this is
he'll be stoked to hear.
I'm just offering this to you. I think the ability to sit with anyone, regardless of whether they're okay or not okay, or whether you're okay or not okay, and it's totally acceptable to not be okay, right? I really want to make sure that people understand that, and because we're constantly told that we're not okay and we need to fix that not okayness, right? I think the ability to sit with anyone is the first starts in the ability to sit with yourself. So if someone is chaotic, if someone is stormy, to be able to find the calm and to not be pulled in to that chaos as well. To know where you stand and your own groundedness. So I think that's another thing, thinking about all the lessons that I've learned and that have been provided to me, is a sense of groundedness. And that, so we talked a little bit earlier about my friends having children, right? And one thing I've learned, so I'm an auntie. I'm a very, very thankful and gracious and humbled auntie, and I've spent a lot of time with I've been cousins, and they're all a little bit younger. And one thing I did learn, and even with clients, if you will, right? Yeah. If you are not feeling okay, that other person's going to feel it. So all the time I've spent with my own family and their children, my friends' kids and my friends' kids, I've learned that as long as you can be okay, the other person's going to feel it. And you can, it's that, what is it? It's like co-regulation, right? And then again, we're clinical, like making it clinical, but I think it's the co-regulation is what it's clinically called, and the attunement. Yeah. So Neil, I hope that whatever you're going through, or that your friend or loved one is going through, like, I hope they really get what they need. And I hope you get, that you can receive what you need to.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
Yeah. Thanks, Neil, for chiming in. Next up, we have the great Ranga Padmanabhan. I'm sorry, Ranga. I always get his name wrong. Ranga Padmanabhan. He's told me like 10 times. Ranga, I love you, buddy. He says, what does culturally sensitive harm reduction actually look like when no one is watching? I love you, Ranga. It's beautiful.
I love that you have these like regulars and fans. Such great questions, honestly. This is such a great conversation. Thank you for that question, Ranga. You know what? Doing the right thing doesn't matter who's looking or not looking. That's just a value that I hold, right? It doesn't matter who's looking or not looking. You just do the right thing, right? And so, and I know that I make it sound so like cavalier, but I honestly, that's one of my values. Like you just got to do the next best right thing, right? So being culturally sensitive. So one of the things that we talk about a lot, like I'm located in the city of Boston. I don't know if this statistic is that accurate anymore, but Boston is historically pretty racist. I think it's changing. Definitely. No, okay. I know it's changing. Like we have a very progressive Taiwanese American female mayor. Like that's cool. Like I'm Taiwanese American, so I'm like, woo, And so, it's definitely changing. But change is slow. Progress is slow. And so we at SPAN, we also I'm very much involved with the Melanated Psychonauts in Boston. It's like a BIPOC group for the Ethnogen. They're EMC, Ethnogen Melanated Collective. And they are like the BIPOC group based in Boston. And we talk about how do we provide education support for those in these communities that may not trust our medical systems, with very good reason, right? Yeah. Even as a kid, if something happened in my home, we wouldn't want to call the EMTs, like have these strangers trapezing through our house and saying this stuff that maybe my family doesn't understand, right? And then not to mention all of the actual harm that our medical system has perpetrated against Black Americans, right? Or Black non-white Americans, right? Or non-white people. And so we talk about just cultural attunement, and which is why we are so passionate about training teachers, community leaders, parents, because we think that in these communities, these are the elders that people will turn to. These are the aunties and the grandmas. I don't know how Ranga, what your community looks like, but growing up, I had a lot of aunties, a lot of uncles, grandmas, everyone's a cousin, everyone's an auntie. And these are the people that you turn to ask for advice. Is advice good? Sometimes not so, but hopefully, at least someone's asked, right? And so that's why we are so passionate about training community members in these communities to understand psychedelics and not to freak out if your teenager, swallowed a handful of shrooms, and that it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay.
Without a doubt. Yeah. It's such a great way to bring awareness into the homes of the people who may not know what it is, because I think it was McKenna who said something along the lines of psychedelics are a substance that when you take them, it makes everybody around you trip out. You know what I mean? Like, so everybody around you is like, whoa, right. And you're like, I'm all right. It's a little groovy over here. I'm all right. And then it gets back to that. So funny, it gets back to that the idea you were talking about. The clinical word for it, I think you used, was like the not coherence, but the co-regulating. If you've taken a substance and you feel different, and everybody around you is freaking out, whoa, that's going to put you in a space where you're really going to have a difficult time on so many levels, right there. It's amazing.
Right.
Ranga, thank you so much for chiming in over here. This one comes to us from Betsy. Betsy's from Oceanside. Betsy, I love you. She says, is a bad trip a sacred teacher?
Betsy, this is such a great question. Thank you so much for asking this because so at the end I'll offer your listeners who've spent so much time with us now some resources. But one of the resources we have is an ebook, and I actually just finished editing, re-editing our chapter on a bad trip, right? And I'm not saying it to like diminish it. Right. When we say bad trip, colloquially, we typically mean something like the trip was challenging. Like, I've had so many bad trips, if we want to think about it, right? I'm crying, weeping beyond belief, right? I'm just like, where are these tears coming from? I should be desiccated by now. But those are challenging trips, right? Yeah. We define a bad trip as something actually bad happening to you. Like maybe you get up and you fall and you hurt your hand, or you twist your arm somehow, or you stub your toe when you're going to the bathroom because, you didn't have a sitter with you or a facilitator with you, whatever, right? Something actually bad happening. And bad trips typically, like these bad trips happen, both the like kind of mental bad trip, the metaphysical one, and the actual physical space one with lack of preparation. So we do believe that preparation, set and setting, will mitigate as much as possible of a bad trip. Now, Betsy, to your question, is a bad trip is a bad trip a teacher? Is that the question?
She said a sacred teacher, but
sacred teacher. My personal opinion, I want to say yes, but again, there's no certainty, right? It's what you take from it.
Right.
And so the ability that the ceremony is, it's not a prescription, it's a container. Like whatever's in that container that comes out in the non-specific amplifying ways that psychedelics are, they kind of emerge. And what lessons are you going to take? Are you going to receive? I mean, I don't like the word taking. It feels so forceful, but these lessons emerge, and can you receive them at the time? One of the things I also learned from the first question is, what have I learned? Yes. One of the things I came to realize was, I'm not like the super devout Buddhist, but my grandmother was on my maternal side, and she would say these two things to me like throughout my life before she passed on. And one of the things I realized coming out of my experiences was, oh, that's what she meant. Oh, I get it now. Like, these are decades later, right?
Yeah.
And so I think, Betsy, thank you for this question, because I think anything can really be a teacher. I really do believe that, I'm not saying there's a lesson in everything. Sometimes bad things just happen, right? Yeah. But I think that if we can be reflective on it and see the world as a mirror, and even the journey experience, the ceremony experience as a mirror, I think there could be some value in that, But again, that's just my personal opinion, Betsy. Everyone's journey is so personal to themselves. So, and I really encourage people to get support, therapy, integration, and support to kind of see what emerges for you. Thank you.
Yeah. Shout out, Betsy. And I'll tell you this, Betsy, because I know what kind of doses you're doing. You're doing like 5 gram doses. Those are big doses. Here's something that I have found that I think works pretty well. The more you try to push it away, and I'm talking about when you take the dose and maybe a couple hours in and all of a sudden you have these really uncomfortable thoughts. This is kind of what her and I were talking about a while back. What I've found, Betsy, works is that the more you try to push it away, the bigger it gets. Just sit with it. And here's one thing that I've learned is that think of all the thoughts when you're tripping as like a line of people waiting to sit in your lap, and they just want your attention. So the bad ones, the good ones, the rowdy ones, the people in line getting crazy, okay, they want your attention. So take all your thoughts, Betsy, bring them right up on your lap, sit them down, put them on your lap, and just talk to them. Be like, what do you got to tell me? What is it? And just listen. Let the thoughts sit as long as they need to with you. And if you don't try to force them away, they'll leave on their own. But the more you try to push them away, the rowdier they get. So just sit with them, Betsy. Just let them sit down at your lap. put your arm around them and listen. What is this thing really telling me? And once you figure that out, you're like, oh, okay, I got it. It's not really a bad thing. It's just something that I need to be aware of. And you start changing your language from bad to aware. It'd be really helpful. It's helped me out quite a bit, Betsy. And I'll talk to you a little bit later about it. But yeah, thank you for chiming in over here. I really appreciate it.
I love that, George. Thank you. I'm going to use that. I mean, another one, as you were saying, like all the people that want your attention. Imagine as a kindergarten teacher, all the students, all of your class, like teacher, or for dog lovers and dog owners out there. So I'm a dog lover.
Beautiful.
Your dog comes to you, wants something. They're just going to keep looking at you until they get the pets, until they get the treat, whatever. And that's kind of, they just want your attention. And so that's an excellent, that's exactly it, George. So thank you for bringing that. Like in the psychedelic experience, because it's non-specific, whatever bubbles up, emerges, it is calling for your attention. And if you can just sit with it, be able to hold it for a little while, as much as you can, and then it will go. And then that's another saying, right? What you can't heal, what you don't feel, what you resist persists.
It's so true.
So true. So true.
Yeah. And you know what? It almost serves as like a simulator too, because once you figure that out in the psychedelic state, you can take that with you outside of the psychedelic state, and you realize these things that pop up, because they happen too outside of a psychedelic state. Oh, you get this panic attack, you're feeling some anxiety or something. Just sit with it. Oh, yeah. In some ways, I really feel the psychedelics are an intelligence talking to us, simulating what we need to do in our lives in order to be better. And it puts us through these situations. And once you become aware of that, you can change your relationship with psychedelics, at least on some level. Like, oh, I'm actually simulating these real feelings, or maybe I'm processing them different with this particular substance. Now I can take this lesson outside of here and do the work, or however you want to describe it. But it's, I see it as like, really getting to sit with things that are wrong in your awareness, and it's changing the way you see it. Maybe that's the neuroplasticity. Maybe that's the set and setting has something to do with that, but it's a real lesson that you can learn from there. And some of the big ones are really tough. It's tough to sit with them. It's scary. Like I've cried my heart out, and I've been curled up in a ball, and but afterwards I'm like, okay, if you can ask the question, what did I learn? Another one, Betsy, is another one I use quite a bit is, what else could this mean? What else could this mean? And if you sit with what else could this mean, you got that reticular activating system. It'll find another reason what it is. So try sitting with that one too. What else could this mean? Who's this one coming from? This one has no name, but the question is, what does the mushroom say to capitalism? Whoever you are, it's a brilliant question. Love it.
I mean, gosh, where do we begin? I mean, I do think that plant medicine is reemerging for this healing that we need, because we are in this ultra unhealthy. I mean, I could talk about, I always tell people, they're like, wait, Jenny, you went to business school, right? And I was like, yeah, I'm like the worst business school student, right? Like I'm like anti-capitalism, right? And so, and they're just kind of like, oh. I was like, yeah, I know, life choices. And that's the thing, right? Like capitalism and this constant need for optimization feeds the machine, keeps the machine running, and plant medicine and healing actually asks us to slow down, and even has the inquiry of, should this machine even exist? Like, is this what we want for ourselves, right? I think we've completely failed to stop to ask, is this what we want, right? And we live, and I think we often fail, like in our optimism and hope, to kind of see the dark side of things in a way. Like there's always unintended consequences, right? Always, right? Some real life examples, because I happen to work in real estate in Boston, which there's a huge housing crunch. This is a very pervasive U.S. problem, et cetera, et cetera. So then the city puts in low housing requirements to help keep those who run our city in the city so they can actually get to work and work, God willing, right? Oh, go figure. Yeah. And but then developers don't want to develop because now these requirements are too stringent and it's costing them money. So there's always like an unintended consequence, right? And so we fail to ask these questions. And I do think that plant medicine helps us open our eyes to kind of see both. Again, I am not advocating that plant medicine is for everybody. Here's some mushrooms, here's some mushrooms. Like, I'm not the Oprah of like psychedelic medicine here, right?
Oprah,
it should be, right?
I love
Although
it.
she's into it now, she had that talk with Michael Pollan. So, but it should be used with discernment, with respect, and with care, and just a humbleness, right? I do believe, like you said, that they are a teacher. They teach us about ourselves. So going back to that very first question that asked about, what have I learned? I've learned so much about myself, and that has been illuminating. Like, we live in our bodies for, however many years I've been in this body now. And I feel like, oh, wow, that's why I do this thing. I had no idea what some of the things that I'm not doing, but just kind of like, oh yeah, that makes sense. This is why I'm the way I am. And now that I see it, I get to decide. I get to change and decide if this is how I want to be, and this is how I want to show up.
I love it. Yeah, you said something earlier in the conversation too about holding two competing ideas. And I recently had on a really cool philosopher named Graham Priest, and he wrote a book called True Paradox. And it's fascinating to think about, what is true, and can two things be true at once? And if the answer is yes, what do you do? It's an interesting thought, right? And I think that more people are beginning to come aware of that. Like, yeah, that's true. And that's true. I know when I moved to Hawaii, like I was born in San Diego, spent most of my life in Caucasian acres. And when I moved to Hawaii, it was such a different melting pot of so many different Eastern influences and so many people. And I remember I was talking to this gentleman from Japan, and I had one idea of what happened in World War II, and he had a whole nother idea. And I remember sitting with him and being like, oh, and I don't want to say I'm ashamed, because I don't want to betray my former self, but I didn't know. I didn't know. And
it's
so
okay. You didn't know, it is.
You don't know what you don't know. And so when I talk with them, that's one of the first times I realized, like, oh, both of these things are true. This is what I was taught, and that's what they were taught. Like, both things are true. And I think there's some real learning that can get done whether it's through psychedelics, because I think they can teach you that, or whether it's traveling. But what are your thoughts on that? About, maybe we can jump back to that two things being true and how that intersects with psychedelics.
Thank you for this question, George, because I was recently in Ho Chi Minh City, right? Saigon, and they, April 29th, I don't know if the world knows this, I did not know it, was the Vietnamese call it the reunification day of North and South. Obviously during the war, Americans supported the South, the North, Viet Cong, communists, right? And the North won, right? And then so it was funny, I was texting my friend, and he asked me, oh my gosh. I was like, this is fascinating. As an American being here right now. And he's like, did you know? I'm like, no, of course I didn't know. I'm American. We don't talk about our losses. Like, right? I was like, and it's also fascinating because my grandparents fled communism, right? And then like my other grandparents on my other side, like fought communism, actually in the war, took a bullet, fought against the Japanese and all these things, right? And what I make this analogy with psychedelics in a way, because here I am physically traveling our earth, our home, right, our globe, and just kind of expanding, literally, kind of in this life, in this plane, expanding my horizons. But psychedelics, they call it a trip for a reason. You are literally journeying, right? And when I say, hey, you need to prepare, it's like, oh, you're going to go to Hawaii tomorrow. You're going to go to Barbados tomorrow. Do you just jump on the plane and you don't take anything with you? Like, so you need to prepare. So I've had people say, Jenny, this is just too much work. I don't want to do this. Okay, then you really don't want to do it. You really just don't want to go. And they're just like, what do you mean? I'm like, it's a trip. It's a journey. Yeah. You prepare for it the way you would if you're actually traveling somewhere. Are you going to bring your swimsuit? Are you going to, how many pieces of underwear are you going to bring? Whatever, and just I'm being facetious and silly, but, but it is literally kind of expanding your horizons so that both can be true. right? Because your truth is your experience of it. And I think sometimes we, especially in the West, especially in North America, especially in America, our biggest export is our culture, right? We export, this is what a family looks like. This is what a vacation looks like. This is what a picture perfect Instagram post looks like, right? And this is what music should sound like, and this is what people should look like, right? And then so, you know, someone was making fun of like my American teeth because everyone gets braces, you know? And so, you know, so our biggest export is, you know, supposedly freedom and culture, whatever. But that's not everyone's experience and not everyone's truth, right? So yeah, both can be true. Yeah. I mean, again, you know, the Vietnamese, my experience of it was so fascinating. There's just such a proud, you know, beautiful, and yet humble people. But you can feel that dignity of like, you know, this is what happened. And we are proud that this is what happened. We're okay with it. And it's just a very humbling experience. Just completely surreal.
Yeah, it does blow my mind to think about how the language for an internal journey is very similar to an external journey. You know, even the language of people say, "Oh, you get high." Well, what happens when you get high? You have a different perspective. Like you're looking down on something. You know, you see things different. There's like a lot of neuroplasticity when you go to a new place for the first time. Like you're open to all these ideas. You're letting the environment course through you, and it's so similar with these just consciousness changing substances. It can't be a coincidence that we use the same language, right?
Yeah, completely. I think, you're if you go to, when you go to a new city, like all of the sights and sounds and smells and everything is kind of like accosting you, right? And that's, I didn't like that in a ceremonial experience, right? Like everything is.
What do you see on the horizon? So you've been talking to lawmakers. You said you're the new kids on the block, and you have these really brilliant strategies about how to, you know, sort of make things aware for the people, the community leaders, the teachers, the parents. What do you see as the next step for Safer Psychedelics Association of New England?
Yeah, we really hope to educate, and in that education process to influence, you know, lawmakers to, you know, while we're not advocating for any specific laws, we've been asked to give our input on them, right? Both Bree and I are trained as psilocybin facilitators, and of course she has the doctorate of behavioral health as well. I have more of a slightly legal background, but also from like a more business background, right? So kind of we've analyzed language for legislation when we've been asked to do so. And we really try to give the pros and cons. We really try to give it all, right? Like, again, we're not trying to say this is the right path or anything like that, but we do believe that more access could be helpful for people, and that if people are going to engage with it, there are some guardrails that people want to think about. And what we do best is we don't describe the trip, because again, that's so personal. That's as far as I'm concerned, that's really irrelevant, right? We talk about the values, and we describe the transformation. And the transformation, if we were talking earlier about the science of it, the science is there. Like, people leave these experiences transformed. And when I think about why it's taking so hard, why it's been so hard and taking so long, it's because this type of radical transformation is so threatening and so foreign, right? I mean, think about, again, I'm trying to kind of bring our exterior to our interior and then vice versa. But if we think about everything that is outside of us is created twice, right? Once it starts here, in here first, and then gets translated out, right? So everything that our government is doing right now, this is like the second iteration of it, because the first iteration's in here somewhere.
Yeah.
And if we look at our protectionist policies, we are regressing, right? And again, I'm not trying to make this into like a political conversation at all, but we are, there is massive fear out there. And these protectionist policies are trying to stem change, right? No change, everything stays static, everything stays safe, right? So, and And that's partly why I think psychedelic legislation takes so long, because it's inherently it's change, and
Yeah.
it's technical change. It's not like saying, one thing that we talk about, like, what does Trump want to do now? Start accounts for children to start saving or something like that. Yeah, okay, that sounds like a lifetime, I don't know, 529 college savings plan. Like, it's kind of the same as something we already know, so it's kind of digestible. But what psychedelics brings, and what I think this type of legislation, this type of healing blows the doors open to, is so radical, and possibly so peaceful, that people just don't want it, because we don't know what peace feels like.
Yeah, it's tough to sell stuff in times of peace. You need that. There's so much of what we have is built on just hardcore competition and scarcity mindsets, and pumping up prices on so many levels. But yeah, I think that the more resistance we get from, be it the administration or corporations, the more radical the psychedelic is going to be. It's yet to be seen whether it's going to spill into something outside of the medical container, and we're going to see something like that. But I think the more resistance, the bigger the psychedelics will come in and change the way people work. It does seem to me that the change is going to come from the bottom up. When you become the best version of yourself, all of a sudden you start changing your community, you start changing your dynamics, you start changing your relationships. And when enough people do that, there's no law or there's nothing up top that's going to be able to hold it back, in my opinion. You think that's a fair assessment?
Yeah, completely. I think, if you think about all of our, I don't want to say heroes, but all the great change makers that we've had, right? One of my favorites is Thich Nhat Hanh, right? He's a Buddhist monk, right? And ultimately, ultimate like peace warrior in many ways, with Martin Luther King Jr. And when you change yourself is ultimately how you can radiate any type of change. And that, but I don't think that's an easy message for people to accept, right? Because we want these externalities. We want to take the stack that's going to change us. We want to, buy this whatever that Facebook or Instagram is selling me, because it's going to make me feel better somehow, whatever, And so we've really lost, I think, I'm not speaking for everyone here, but what I do, I speak for myself, that I think there was a time where I really lost the ability to be grounded in myself, and we look for externalities to make ourselves feel better, because we need to keep feeding this machine. And because, God forbid, this machine dissolve, then what are we left with? That's scary.
Yeah, I think it's necessary on so many levels. It's just the fear. It's just running on fear, but when you, and that, maybe that's the thing with the tragedies too. And maybe that's why so many people that hit rock bottom absolutely come out changed, and they see, and they start living a better life for themselves and their families and their relationships, is that you really have to work on that fear. You really have to, and it's different for everybody. Someone might have the fear of not being enough. Some people might have the fear of, losing their life pretty soon, or, getting towards the end of their time. But it's just that fear alone that, once you wrestle with it, you begin to realize, look, I think I can beat this fear over here. But it's such a powerful thing. Jenny, we're coming up on this hour and a half. I walked you right up to the line right here. And I don't think we even we scratched the surface, but I feel like we could talk for another couple hours. So you got to come back, and maybe Bree can come with you next time, or Bree can come on, or maybe some people from your team. I would love to talk to everybody. So
thank you.
Yeah. But before we land the plane here, where can people find you? What do you got coming up? What are you excited about?
Yeah, thank you. So as you mentioned earlier, we're going to be at Psychedelic Sciences. So if anyone's interested in attending, our organization has a discount code for tickets. You can get 15% off. If the discount code, should I just pop it in the chat, or what should I do here?
Yeah. Can you do that? Can you go, if you go down, there should be a present button right there. Should allow you to pop it up.
Present slides and PDF. Oh, should I share screen?
Oh yeah, can you do that?
I don't know if I can do that. Well, you know what? Here, let me just tell it to people. It's just
and I'll put it in the show notes too.
Okay, thank you. SPAN 15. That gets you 15% off of the tickets for the conference. We will be there. So if anyone is attending, please come up to us and introduce yourselves. We'd love to get to know you. We also have a LinkedIn. Follow us on LinkedIn. We also have IG. You just Google us, spanbase.org. Spanbase, that's SPANBASE.org. Our LinkedIn, you can just Google or not Google, search, I guess, on the top, Safer Psychedelics, and we have our LinkedIn there. We have volunteers, and we also, I'm remiss, I want to give a shout out to our volunteer team, because without them, none of this could happen. So our volunteer team, they're wonderful. They volunteer with us because they also believe in the mission and to get this information out to people who really need it and who can benefit from it. So thank you to you for having me here. Thank you to all our supporters, and thank you to your listeners for all these fantastic questions. So evocative and deep. My gosh.
Yes. Well, hang on briefly afterwards, Jenny, but to everybody within the sound of my voice, Desiree, Betsy, Neil, Ronga, I had a few people without their names. Put your names in. I want to give you guys some credit. So thank you to everybody that listened with us today, that hung out. And Jenny, hang on briefly afterwards. To everybody, have a beautiful day. Go check out the links in the show notes. Check out Jenny and SPAN, and check them out at Psychedelics Today. Once again, the company's Safer Psychedelics Association of New England, spanbase.org. That's all we got, ladies and gentlemen. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you.